Hey guys, I hope you're having a great day. As you might be able to tell from how I look or how I sound, I've actually just woken up and slowly getting through my morning coffee. So today's video might be a bit slower paced than usual. I am also dog sitting again today, so you can see little Lola behind me on this side. She's usually pretty quiet, so hopefully she'll just sit back there and chill for a bit. But anyway, today we are going to be talking about my new 2000 point list, which I have been playing with a little bit for the last few weeks. Now, when it comes to list building for myself, I tend to run what I would consider quite balanced lists, mainly because there are still so many armies that I haven't played against and I'm not familiar with. So when I'm going up against these armies that I don't have much of an idea as to what they can do, or you know what their strengths or weaknesses are, I find that I do better when I have a balanced list that can be a bit more I guess reactive might be the best way to say it, and not too skewed at doing one thing. Because what I have found with people who do tend to play skew lists is they either dominate pretty hard or they just get destroyed really quickly. Now, another note in terms of how this kind of compares to my previous list, one of the biggest weaknesses that Death Guard has is its movement, right? A lot of our units are moving at 5 inches or 4 inches, so to kind of get around that, I used to have quite a lot of units in Deep Strike and reserves, which sometimes works really well, especially if you're going up against a lot of like shooty armies. But what I found is when I've gone up against melee focused armies or more balanced armies, I really struggle a lot, because I calculated it on my last list and I had about 900 points of my army in reserves, which was pretty crazy. I was also utilizing a few allied units. I still am in my new one, but a bit more in my last one. And I guess the downside to that is you're obviously not getting all of your contagions and all of the other good stuff that Death Guard can use. Some of their stratagems can be handy at times. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of like a brief overview. So yeah, let's just jump straight into it. I have got a box of units right here next to me, and I've also got a box of like my my bigger ones down below. So I'll start with what's in front of me, and you cannot have a Death Guard list without Plague Marines, right? So I do love to have a unit of 7 Plague Marines. I feel like 5 units tend to be a bit too little. They get killed off so easily, whereas 10-man squads, obviously their survivability is better, but for example, sometimes I'll have Plague Marines sitting on one of the flanks holding an objective, and the opponent just won't touch that side of the map at all. And let's say they've killed whatever is on that side of the map, then it's quite a lot of points invested on that side of the map which are doing nothing. Especially because I tend to run my Plague Marines a lot more melee focused. So I do 3 heavy weapons, including the champion, 2 bubotic weapons, 1 melter gun, and 1 plague spewer. So very short, mid-ranged focused squad. The thing about Plague Marines as well is you can't really run them on their own, right? You do need to attach characters to them for them to be pretty decent. So in terms of the characters I attach with them, and this is pretty standard, I think most people kind of run this when they're doing the melee focus list, but I have a Biologist Purifier and a Foul Blightspawn, and the Biologist is just so strong. He did get a little nerf in the last update where around the grenade strat, but to be honest, I don't even use that grenade strat very often. A lot of the time, just him being in that Plague Marine squad and giving lethals on 5s gives that unit so much value. Foul Blightspawn obviously gives them fight first as well, which is crucial for a melee focused squad. His flamer is super powerful as well. So with the Foul Blightspawn and the Plague Spewer, they do have a decent overwatch. They're pretty good at handling almost anything, because you've got so many lethal hits when you're critting on 5s. You've got the ability to do mortals on your grenades. You've got a bit of anti-infantry with your flamers, and I have the melter gun as well, so a tiny bit of anti-tank in there as well. I usually rely on lethal hits for my anti-tank, and I really do like loading them out like this. Sometimes they'll take a few wounds before they can even get into combat, and in those instances I'd usually kill off the Plague Spewer and then the melter gun, so then I've got my melee squad ready to go in, because the plague knives that the 2 other ones have, they're not that powerful. They do a little bit of chip damage here and there, which is nice. I do have some vehicles. Obviously I put these guys in a Rhino, but I'll bring up my vehicles later on. In terms of the other kind of like infantry that I have in my list, I've started running a unit of cultists again. A while back I used to run these guys all the time, but then I kind of stopped because I started running like multiple units of plague marines. What I found is I personally struggle a little bit when I have 2 units of plague marines. When I've got 1 unit, it's very easy for me to focus and say, okay, this unit of plague marines is going to take this objective, and that is their goal for this game. When I've got 2, I'm kind of like, okay, this one is going to do this, and then the second one, because the second one also has quite a lot of points invested in it, it's like, oh, what do I do with it? I could go for this objective, but then I don't really have anything covering my backlines because I've invested so many points in this. And yeah, so what I tended to do was have a second unit of plague marines, which was very shooty focused, but they never ended up doing much. So I decided to bring the cultists back, and these guys are great at just getting that early move, sometimes capturing objectives in turn 1, and just being annoying in general. Yeah, that's all they do really. They're only 50 points. They're great. They're pretty good at screening as well. And yeah, they're just a nice little throwaway unit where you can kind of put them in places to block your enemy while the rest of your units are kind of catching up. After that, I also have a unit of 20 Poxwalkers, and it's been a while since I've been playing with these guys. I do enjoy Poxwalkers. I think they are so cool. In the last game that I showed on the channel, I played against Grey Knights, and they are so tanky. With the stratagem go to ground, giving them a 6-up invul, and then having that feel no pain on top of that, they are so resilient. And then being able to revive themselves back, especially if you've got Typhus with them too. I don't know why I stopped using them. I think I stopped using them for a while because a lot of the people at my club were running quite like shooty, heavy armies, and they were just getting blown off the board before I even got the chance to do anything with them, because I would usually run them as one group of 20, whereas I never really thought too much about if, for example, I was going up against a very shooty army, maybe breaking them into 2 groups of 10 just so they can hold down the back line or something. When I was building this list, I was kind of keeping that like flexibility in mind as well, just so it's not like there's only one way I can run this list, if that makes sense. Now with the Poxwalkers, sometimes I do run them with Typhus, and Typhus is just so good at the moment. He's only 80 points, he's super strong in melee, he's got that awesome magic attack, and I've actually recently discovered that I have been doing his magic wrong. So whenever you fail his hazardous test thing, it's not hazardous, I always thought that it was a flat 3 damage mortals to yourself, and I've always been playing it that way, which is why I was always a little bit hesitant to run him with Deathshroud Terminators, because I thought it was just a flat out one of them is dead. What I didn't realize until like last week is that it's actually D3 mortal wounds to yourself. So I've been playing him with a bit of a handicap this whole time. It does make me feel a lot safer running him with Deathshroud in the future, but basically I've been running him with the Poxwalkers lately just to try and be annoying, revive them a bit more. I'd love to try having him in reserves with them one day and like just bring in this whole maybe like rapid ingressing this massive unit of Poxwalkers with Typhus to just be annoying. I think that would be so much fun. If I don't go down that route, I do have not 1 but actually 2 units of Deathshroud Terminators, and one of the units isn't painted. One of them is actually only half painted too, so I do need to finish these. And I like having 6 Deathshroud, so I can either run them as 2 units of 3, 1 unit of 6, I can run them on their own, or I can run, you know, one of them with Typhus. They're just so flexible, and I think they're pretty good all-rounder. You know, they've got their little flamer guns, which if they're in Contagion range are actually fairly decent. If you're doing that -1 save, you can get quite a lot of chip damage off that. They've also got pretty good melee profiles too. So yeah, and then if you're running them with a character, obviously you get that -1 to wound if the opponent's strength is higher than your toughness, which is really good. So 2 units of Deathshroud now. I'm just looking in here to see what else I've got. I've got a few other characters. So I had Typhus, and I also have a Lord of Contagion, and I absolutely love the Lord of Contagion. I think he is so cool, just not just in terms of looks. He's definitely one of my favorite looking models, but giving the ability to reroll hits is so good for Deathshroud. If you've got him with a unit of 6 Deathshroud, and you're re-rolling hits for lethals, and you're using like Sanguis Flux to try and get those sustained hits, you will destroy almost everything. And he is an absolute beast in combat as well. He's got a similar profile to Typhus. I'll have to double check this on my list, but I believe I have enough points left over to give him, is it Deadly Pathogen? So he's got 1 extra attack and 1 extra strength, or 2 extra attack and 2 extra strength if he's on a contagious objective. And then another character that I've got sitting in the back here, which I also haven't painted, is a Tallyman. And it's been a very long time since I've run a Tallyman, and I've actually been running him just on his own, just for the CP. I say for the CP, just for the chance for extra CP, because I tend to play quite CP heavy games. I'm using stratagems all the time. I'm trying to learn to be a bit more conservative with it. It's one of those things where I'm just in the habit of, like, if someone's moved in range of me, I'll just overwatch them if I've got flamers, whereas now I'm thinking like, okay, if I overwatch them, will that actually be impactful, or should I just save that CP for something else? And just having the Tallyman in the squad will just give me a bit more flexibility around that sort of stuff. So have enjoyed having him back in the squad. The only other thing that I've got in my infantry box here is a unit of Nurglings. These guys are really good at scoring secondaries. I tend to have them in deep strike and just drop them in if I need to score some points somewhere, and then that's all they do really. They're pretty good at tying up infantry characters. You know, if for example my opponent was running a Tallyman on its own, I think a unit of Nurglings would probably be able to tie that Tallyman up for the whole game. So it's nice having a cheap unit which you can throw at like a little lone op character or something like that. So yeah, that is all of my infantry unit. I'm just going to put this box back down, and then I'll bring up my other box and we'll take a look at some of the vehicles and things I'm bringing. Okay, so I got my vehicle box here. Now, like I mentioned at the start, I do have a Rhino, and I've been running this Rhino since I've been playing like 500 point games. I love it. I think it's so good. It just makes the Plague Marines feel a lot safer and can actually get them to objectives or big targets which they want to take on. So I believe I will always be running at least one Rhino. In terms of other transport vehicles, I have actually started bringing a Land Raider, and you can tell it isn't painted or anything. I haven't actually glued all of this together yet. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do yet in terms of like the paint scheme, but Land Raiders are such... I've actually had a lot of fun bringing the Land Raider, because the way I've run Death Guard in the past has been quite melee or mid-range focused, so I'm not used to having so many like las cannons which I can just shoot from the back line, and also having an option to transport some of my Deathshroud Terminators. What I've been doing is running one unit of Deathshroud, usually with the Lord of Contagion inside the Land Raider, and you know, just slowly kind of like bringing it up around the flank and just shooting at things the whole game, and then if anything gets too close, unloading the Deathshroud with Lord of Contagion and just taking out those threats. So really enjoying the Land Raider at the moment. It's a shame it doesn't have a bit more capacity. I would love to be able to run 6 Deathshroud in there with one of the leaders. I also have the Death Guard's mascot, Plague Burst Crawler. It's so handy just having one of these with indirect fire. Sometimes you just have, your opponent will just have one unit which is just sitting on their home objective or something, and it'll be like a cheap throwaway unit, and having the ability to shoot that off with the mortar, I think it's definitely worthwhile having at least one of these in the army. I know a lot of players tend to run 2 or 3 of them. I never really get a whole lot of value out of my Plague Burst Crawlers. I feel like they're pretty good at kind of chipping away at things, but I would never say that this has won me the game. So I don't know if I'll pick up any more of these anytime soon. I do have the entropy cannons on here, but I do run it with the Plague Spewers, because usually this is holding down the backline for me, my home base. So just in case some infantry units try and, you know, deep strike in, then I've got those flamers to take it out, and I've also got the heavy stubber. I still need to paint the spewers. I haven't done it yet. I think I've magnetized them, I just haven't painted them, so I'll get onto that one day. I also have a Predator Destructor, and I absolutely love this. It's so cool having a flat free damage gun, especially when going up against like Terminators and things. Having the chance to just outright kill them is so cool. A couple of extra las cannons as well can be handy. They're not the most reliable things in the world, but hey, every now and then they get the job done. I think that combined with the Land Raider that I have, 6 las cannons a turn now, is a fairly decent long range threat, which I've never really had before. So I've had a lot of fun with that so far. I do have one allied unit, a Brigand. His guns have just fallen off. And I mean, Brigands are so powerful, and they are so good at the anti-tank role. I do love running Brigands in reserves, and then, you know, so if a tank or something does get a little bit too close to me, I can bring it in from reserves and be within that the 12-inch melter range, because you only need to be 9 inches away from them. Oh, the Brigand just absolutely destroys kind of like those light and medium vehicles. When you're taking on heavy ones, as long as you've got something in Contagion range, which brings their toughness down to like 11, still does really well. So I do love having one of them. He's got a little bit of indirect fire too, which is nice. His points did go up a little bit. In the past I did run 2 of them, but the thing with Brigands is they are fairly short ranged vehicles, so you do have to be a little bit careful about, you know, if you bring it onto the board and you kill something, that it's not just like sitting out there in the middle of nowhere, being quite vulnerable, and which is why I don't like having it on the table right at the start of the game. And then to wind up my list, the Demon Primarch Mortarion. I have had so much fun running him lately, and it's so nice that they clarified his rules around what the whole like ignoring modifiers thing does, because that was probably the main reason why I didn't run him in the past, was that different people had different opinions on what he could and couldn't do. So now that that's all been clarified, I've just been bringing him along and having such a great time. He is an absolute beast, and a lot of the time people don't know how to handle him because he has that 4-up invul and 5-up feel no pain. He can just be so swingy. I've had him tank a whole almost 2,000 points worth of shooting in 1 turn. I've also had him die to like a 150 point dreadnought in like a turn and a half as well. So, you know, sometimes he does amazing, sometimes he doesn't do that well. I'm still kind of learning like the best way to utilize him, but I think he is such a good leader and he's so tanky. He doesn't have the best damage output in the world, but he is a massive distraction, and I love just having him. I used to run him kind of like in the center of the board to, you know, just soak up attacks left, right and center. But what I've started doing is trying to like put him more on like one of the flanks, just to like make sure that I can take secure just like one of the flanks. Very fun model to play with, and it's nice having like a cool like centerpiece for the army. Right, I'm just going through my list on the 40k app just to make sure I haven't missed anything. Okay, yes, so I did have Deadly Pathogen as an enhancement on the Lord of Contagion. I'll take a screenshot of this and show it, put it on screen as well, just so you guys can see like the full point breakdown. But yeah, that is my new 2,000 point list, which I've been really enjoying playing with. What I love about this is, like I mentioned at the start, just having so much of my army on the board to start with. It's very refreshing for me, and a lot of people that I play do tend to have like all of their army on the board at the start of the game, so it is kind of like the norm for a lot of players, but for myself it's quite new and fresh, and I've really been enjoying it. If I was thinking about like weaknesses of my army, I do have quite a lot of vehicles and monsters with you know, I've got the Rhino, I've got Land Raider, Predator, Plaguebeast Crawler, Brigand and Mortarion. So, you know, if someone went for like bring it down, I also have a lot of characters. Yeah, that's probably another Death Guard weakness, is you do need to bring quite a lot of characters to buff up your units, because I've got the Foul Blightspawn, Biologist, Tallyman, Mortarion again, Typhus and Lord of Contagion. So if someone went fixed, bring it down, assassination, there are a lot of points up for grabs. Definitely. I think if I was going up against someone who did that though, I would definitely play a lot more on the defense to try and deny as many of those points as I could. But yeah, other than that, I think it's fairly balanced. I'll do a few more battle reports with this army and let you guys know how it goes. Oh, the other thing is, like, the first time I used this was my first 100 point game that I ever had. So it was a really great start for this new army, and I can't wait to share more of its battles with you guys. So hey, if you've made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you guys again sometime soon. I've hoped you enjoyed today's video as well. I tried to put in a little bit of effort and take like a few more photos and things, so let me know if you enjoyed that kind of stuff. Alright, I'll see you around.